simply been very clever at being researchers and very clear-headed about these things. And they've been referred to from thousands of years ago as an invisible kind of influence on humans, as well as more recently by those that have been investigating certain aspects of the abduction phenomena. So really, the question is, what is all this about? And I have to look past what I consider to be the unfortunate, naive, and confusion in certain circles that presume all ETs or most ETs, must be good guys and they're here to rescue us, et cetera, and look at the bigger picture, the bigger patterns, and that being humans are being prepared for an alien threat. And that is the overall meme that's been promoted year after year in the past 10 years. 20 years, and for all of the ones that purport to be sort of good guys, the vast majority have a less than altruistic agenda, and that is what people have been prepared for. And the big question is, to me, is to whether, perhaps even next year, such a thing may come into the, open and overt public attention or not. And I think that depends a great deal on what takes place over the coming months.
And doesn't it seem to you, from what you've been observing, that regardless of whether it's from the Mayan calendar or, the sun moving here or there, or we're moving into the photon belt, that the energies and the space that we are in seems to be either compressing or we are moving faster towards some kind of event horizon that, or maybe many event horizons that could pop at any moment. I mean, there's so many different things that are going on the planet, and I don't want to get sidetracked on that because I want to relate it to the idea that we're in a period when it's possible that we might be able to ride this tide and ascend to a higher, to somehow move out of this collective dissonance and the darkness that has prevailed since the beginning of time into some kind of higher new reality.
Well, I think the first thing is that it's important for people to really take a look at what's most important to them. And there's an expression that that comes out of some of the earlier theosophically oriented work, and I've used it myself, and of course I no longer do. And it was we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a human experience. And the fact is that while it seemed very clever turn of phrase, I believe is a falsehood itself. And there's a great deal of confusion around the notion of ascension. But I wanted to just conclude the notes about this whole extraterrestrial business because I feel that it is a major distraction, and it touches upon many different things, including those of all of these rumored whispers, fearsome beings of all kinds, invisible reptilians, the whole 9 yards, and these are all perceived and projected enemies that humans can do nothing about, even if it was indeed really all true, as described by many different people. And all it does is put people in another state of destabilization, fear, and distractions. And I think that what's important is to know who you are, what you are about, and this has a lot to do with the nature of the human being. And that maybe a long time ago, that humans had more of an advanced animalistic nature, where there was, of course, all the things that one would associate with the body in terms of protecting itself, right? And getting by and procreating and all of those things. And that the sense was it developed a higher ethics, a social reference that goes beyond what you'd find in some more developed animal societies. beyond what you'd have of different cousins, aunties, and elfes, and what have you, all looking after the families. You know, I'm thinking of wolves and other advanced societies, and developed more of a social sense of an ethos and an individual I that was a bit more individuated, but still was closer all to, you know, an animal consciousness, and higher beings would come and go, touching in on these beings. But over time, for better or for worse, the humans developed more of a critical mass of an I, with a greater sense, even though it was heavily distorted and obfuscated, of a greater sense of awareness of something else. And of course, there were those that penetrated some of the invisible dimensions and reported back to their fellow humans, and, you know, they became healers, teachers, what have you. So what we have is an unusual situation today, and this has a lot to do with, as far as I'm concerned, why things have taken as long as they've taken to get to this point. And that is that we have not only a situation where there's larger being, higher self, a soul being, whatever you want to call it, associated with an individual human, most humans now. And there's also individual humans from a human I perspective who have evolved and developed more of a sense of a larger energetic integrity. And that's an important thing. So it's not a matter of, this isn't working, let's go and, you know, withdraw the soul being relationship with the humans. Let's see what we can do to help what there is of individuated humans as would be experienced upon normal death, to reintegrate or to perhaps retain some of their individuation. But also the larger soul beings have to be addressed as well. Some of these human beings could potentially become a nucleus for some of these larger beings, because now, due to greater awareness, many humans have come to understand a bit more of the larger scheme of things, even if it is confused at times. And this touches on what I'm working on a short article on this. This whole problem of ascension, because it had become initially a means of escape, and in some ways wasn't much different than some of the spiritual teachings that were promoted, that I would say misinformed, and you know, these kinds of spiritual teachings we still have today. It informs people that reality is a miasm, it's an illusion, etc., etc. And on one hand, this is true. On the other hand, it's not. And the result of emphasizing the illusion of 3D human Earth experience, the result of emphasizing that without understanding the specifics or the dynamics that are at play in the entire sweep of human existence and the relationship, between that level of consciousness, and higher levels of consciousness, did a tremendous disservice in preventing greater spiritual awareness to come in. And part of this also included the destruction, annihilation, or denial of the ego self, and all these other kinds of teachings. So overall, it became a matter of transcend the physical world, and whatever was promised, as what you would find were by and large false, in that sense that it only put those rare few students or seekers, only a rare few were able to connect to higher levels of consciousness. And of those, the vast, vast majority were fooled into thinking they had discovered a high level of God consciousness, and all they had gotten to was a high level of the dark force God consciousness.
Okay.
And this then raises the next question. So overall, these teachers, their teachings, whether they be religious or non-religious, it doesn't matter, basically concealed or failed for whatever reasons, and it's not important now, I don't think, but they failed to disclose the difference between a zone or a bubble or whatever you want to call it, that we would find ourselves in human form on the planet Earth, et cetera, in this galaxy. It would be part of what has been termed a fallen realm or a dark or a zone of creation under dark force control. And this was an early problem that some tendencies that people today have labeled Gnostics discovered, or at least tried to convey. But even amongst those types, way back when, thousands of years ago, they had different opinions on this whole matter, and it wasn't a single unified set of teachings. So today, while I know that Gnosticism and Gnosis and all of this has become much more of interest to people who are spiritually seeking greater truth, there's a great deal that's being promoted under those labels that is not true. And some of it is actually under the dark side perspective. So this is a confusing thing, but it was very interesting. It's one of the few things from a long time ago that has been able to be conveyed today, at least through some record. And this ties in also with the alien phenomena in the regard of various somewhat invisible or interdimensional dark beings that they're like an infestation, and they prey upon energy, they influence behavior, they're parasitic entities, and it interpenetrates this reality. And so this is why the whole extraterrestrial thing is of concern and interest to spiritually minded people. And it has nothing to do with whether anyone is going to disclose anything about government involvement. It's totally irrelevant. So one of the things and this influences the whole notion of ascension. Now, there were various mystery schools or initiations that were really about helping those human candidates who could make the grade, so to speak. We're talking a long time ago now, to develop a direct contact with, we'll call it the dark force creation lords, or whatever you want to refer to them. And so imagine if you were an aspiring human a long time ago and you wanted to really know more, be more, all of that, right? Sounds like an army ad. You would perhaps select yourself, and if you made the grade, you would be able to stay in there. And if you proved yourself in different ways, perhaps you would complete enough of the initiations and certain kinds of energy practices that would provide a direct conduit between your human awareness and something that would seem to be, that was way beyond ordinary human. If you don't know any better and have nothing to compare to, it would seem as if you may have met God itself. And whether it was a name of a being that was associated with some so-called religious history or traditions or what have you, or was just something mind-blowing. Whether you drank some strange things and had some weird wires plugged into your head, who knows? It really doesn't matter. There's many different modes of stimulating the energy bodies and the awareness. And the whole goal, of course, was to train people, and they'd have different ways of filtering out, weak candidates. And so this sort of information survived on into recent millennia, and some rediscovered some of these things and developed meditative practices that relied more on inner technology, so to speak, as opposed to external technologies. And but it wasn't much different than trying to say, well, I wish to have, to be in this state of higher consciousness and transcendent awareness, and I don't like this world, etc. It overall was an escape. And the